Page 11, questions 68 through 73. Question 68. Assume that an engineer is able to observe refrigerant, water, and oil together. The fluids would settle in the container from top to bottom. Oil, water, refrigerant. Observing refrigerant, water, and oil together in one container, oil would sit on top, followed by water, and refrigerant on the bottom. Question 69. What is the function of the vacuum breaker in a steam turbine? To achieve a faster coast-down cycle, the vacuum breaker in a steam turbine functions to achieve a faster coast-down cycle. Question 70. An equalizer line on a TXV is used to compensate for the pressure drop across the evaporator coil. An equalizer line on a TXV compensates for the pressure drop across the evaporator coil. Question 71. If R134 accidentally touches a refrigerant engineer's skin, what first aid should be applied from the MSDS? Promptly flush skin with water until all chemical is removed. If R134 refrigerant touches your skin, promptly flush skin with water until all chemical is removed. Question 72. In a multi-stage centrifugal compressor, each stage is identical in volume to the other stages. In a multi-stage centrifugal compressor, all the stages are of identical volume. Question 73. A refrigeration engineer notices excessive cycling of the temperature control for reciprocating compressor refrigeration unit. The crankcase temperature is high, the compressor discharge temperature low, the suction line temperature is high. Of the following, the one that may causing this set of conditions is faulty compressor valves. In a reciprocating compressor refrigeration unit, faulty compressor valves may cause such issues as excessive cycling of the temperature control, high crankcase temperature, low compressor discharge temperature, and high suction line temperature. Page 12, questions 74 through 80. Question 74. On an operating centrifugal compressor refrigerant unit, the refrigeration engineer notices that the compressor is short cycling. The unit is using low side float valve as a metering device. Of the following requirements, this would indicate that the system is undercharged with refrigerant. On a centrifugal compressor refrigerant unit, which is using a low side float valve as a metering device, if the compressor is short cycling, this would indicate that the system is undercharged with refrigerant. Question 75. The vessel depicted below may be used in connection with refrigerant recovery. The vessel depicted in question 75 may be used for refrigerant recovery. Question 76. A refrigeration system uses jet ejectors to raise settled oil mixed with refrigerant to the oil pump. If a restriction in the refrigerant flow to the jet ejector develops, there may be insufficient head to lift the oil. If a system uses jet ejectors to raise settled oil, a restriction in the flow of refrigerant to the jet ejectors may result in insufficient head to lift the settled oil. Question 77. An indirect low-temperature refrigerant system frequently uses glycol, instead of salt brine, as the intermediate cooling medium. An advantage of this choice is the elimination of corrosion. Systems that use glycol as the intermediate cooling medium, instead of salt brine, have the advantage of eliminating corrosion. This is frequently used in indirect low-temperature refrigerant systems. Question 78. In relation to the suction pressure of a compressor, the reading on the oil pressure gauge should read in the range closer to 15 to 30 pounds per square inch higher. Oil pressure should read 15 to 30 pounds per square inch higher than the suction pressure of a compressor. Question 79. Non-condensable gases like air, oil vapor, or nitrogen travel through a refrigerant system with the refrigerant. They usually accumulate in the condenser. The non-condensable gases that travel through a refrigerant system alongside the refrigerant, like air, oil vapor, or nitrogen, will accumulate in the condenser. Question 80. The advantage of forced draft cooling tower over natural draft cooling towers is smaller tower size. The advantage of a forced draft cooling tower over natural draft cool is smaller tower size. Page 13, questions 81 through 87. Question 81. The sole refrigeration engineer on duty in a building is permitted to leave the building refrigeration system when it is in operation only when relieved by another licensed refrigeration engineer. A licensed refrigeration engineer must always be present when the building's refrigeration system is in operation, so should only be permitted to leave as they are relieved by another licensed engineer coming on duty. Question 82. A system controlled by a TXV show high discharge pressure and high normal subcooling. The cause is most probably a refrigerant overcharge. A system controlled by a TXV may show high discharge pressure and high normal subcooling due to refrigerant overcharge. Question 83. Which of following is a correct statement? 2.5 gallons of water weighs 20.8 pounds. Of the water volumes and weights listed in question 83, the correct weight for 2.5 gallons of water is 20.8 pounds. Question 84. Liquid level gauge glasses, except the Bullseye, are generally equipped with automatic shutoff valves only. Except for the Bullseye, liquid level gauge glasses are generally equipped with automatic shutoff valves only. Question 85. Copper and aluminum are frequently used for condenser tubes in refrigeration systems. These metals are used because of their high heat transfer coefficient. Copper and aluminum are used for condenser tubes in refrigeration systems because of their high heat transfer coefficient. Question 86. Assume that a refrigeration engineer has a choice of 4 valves to select from. Which of the following is the most effective type of valve to control pressure? A plug valve. A plug valve controls pressure more effectively than a ball valve, quarter turn valve, or gate valve. Question 87. Where must the material safety data sheets be located? Where available to all employees. Material safety data sheets should be located where they are available to all employees. Page 14, questions 88 through 94. Question 88. The oil collected in an oil separator is generally returned to the compressor. Oil collected in an oil separator is generally returned to the compressor. Question 89. What is the function of G-bang and steam? Seal the turbine rotor carbon rings. The function of gland steam is to seal in the turbine rotor carbon rings. Question 90. Regarding the functioning of steam turbine, how is the water level controlled in the surface condenser hot well? Operation of the recirculation and overboard valves. In a steam turbine, the operation of the recirculation and overboard valves is to control the water level in the surface condenser hot well. Question 91. The cause of a starved evaporator might be low refrigerant charge. Low refrigerant charge may be the cause of a starved evaporator. Question 92. A refrigeration engineer is running 2 centrifugal condenser water pumps in parallel. One of the pumps is at maximum pumping rate. If by mistake, the refrigeration engineer throttles back on the discharge valve of the other pump, the most likely effect will be a reduction on the total flow rate to the condenser. With 2 centrifugal condenser water pumps running in parallel, if one is at maximum pumping rate and the engineer instead throttles back on the discharge valve of the other pump, the most likely effect will be a reduction on the total flow rate to the condenser. Question 93. The total amount of heat to be removed from the refrigerant in a condenser equals the heat picked up in the evaporator plus the heat of compression. The total amount of heat to be removed from the refrigerant in a condenser equals heat picked up in the evaporator plus the heat of compression. Question 94. The amount of electrical power used to operate a solenoid valve or a motor is measured in volts. Electrical power is measured in volts, so the amount of electrical power used to operate a solenoid valve or a motor will be measured in volts. Page 15, questions 95 through 100. Question 95. Of the FOL Bang-Oing, the most common metering device used today in reciprocating commercial refrigeration system under 3 tons capacity is TEV. TEV, thermal expansion valve, also known as TXV, is the most common metering device used today in reciprocating commercial refrigeration systems under 3 tons capacity. Question 96. The purpose of wear rings in a centrifugal pump is to prevent wearing of the pump housing and impeller. In a centrifugal pump, wear rings prevent wearing of the pump housing and impeller. Question 97. You are the engineer running a 2,000-ton, steam-driven turbine centrifugal refrigeration system. A refrigeration system supplies chilled water to a college campus with multiple buildings. While making rounds, you notice that the condenser water coming back down from the 9-cell cooling tower on the roof is at a temperature of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to make an adjustment to bring the temperature of the condenser water down to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Which one of the following immediate actions would you take? Increase the speed of the cooling tower fans. Increasing the speed of the cooling tower fans can bring the temperature of the condenser water down. Question 98. A water chiller is equipped with a reciprocating compressor, a thermostatic expansion valve and an air-cooled condenser. A restriction in the refrigerant liquid line would result in high suction superheat. A restriction in the refrigerant liquid line of a water chiller could result in high suction superheat. Question 99. A solenoid valve is used to allow a reciprocating refrigeration machine to adapt to the load on the system. The opening of the solenoid valve is caused by an electrical current creating a magnetic field. The opening of the solenoid valve, which helps adapt to the load on the refrigeration system, is opened by an electrical current creating a magnetic field. Question 100. The process by which refrigerant is extracted and cleaned for reuse without requirements for reclamation is called recycle. When refrigerant is extracted and cleaned for reuse without requirements for reclamation, it's called a recycle process.